Meanwhile, a mass rally is underway in the British capital of London in support of these refugees fleeing wars and violence. Tens of thousands of people have joined the rally to stress that the refugees are welcomed and should be treated with respect and dignity. They're calling on the British government to do more and have a larger share in helping the Syrian asylum seekers. After marching through London, protesters will be heading for Prime Minister David Cameron's residence on Downing Street to demand more government action regarding Europe's biggest refugee crisis since World War II. Similar rallies dubbed the Day of Action are planned in other European countries. Rival groups have also planned counter demonstrations in the Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovakia. Crossing over to London, joined by Press TV's Amina Taylor. Amina, who is at that rally. Amina, tell us what's going on.
Marzia, good to have you with me and also the Press TV viewers across the world. It is quite frankly shocking for me. When we first noted that this demo had been called after seeing some rather disturbing images of young asylum seekers and young refugees losing their lives trying to make that perilous journey across the Mediterranean, it appeared to me that there would be some interest, but the level, frankly, today, Marzia, I think has even confounded those who were supporting this event and who had called this event to being, for example, people from Solidarity for Refugee, Refugee Action, the Refugee Council, Blackout London, Barrack UK. The list goes on, because what they're trying to say in as joined up a fashion as possible is that Britain, frankly, have got it wrong. Their policy and the way in which we've treated those who are seeking sanctuary from, frankly, conflicts that many of us have caused on this side of the Mediterranean. It's very difficult for us to look towards David Cameron's policy so far and say this is what represents British public opinion. And I think the estimates here of between 75 to 100,000 people on the streets today, Marzia, might tell the Prime Minister that David Cameron, you've got it wrong. Now, my cameraman is just panning around for you so you can have more of an idea of the streams of people who continue to pass us by. And the message is quite clear, as you mentioned at the top there. It's about refugees being welcome, about treating the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of those who are seeking sanctuary as human beings and not as political statistics to be kicked from one country to another. And as your correspondent mentioned in the piece that preceded this particular broadcast, it's about what happens with the rest of Europe, this joined up thinking, because so far Britain hasn't played ball. It's wanted to call the shots in a kind of domestic sense without realizing that this is an international crisis. And this isolationist position that the UK has seemingly taken, not with the consent of Scotland, we might add, because First Minister there, Nicola Sturgeon, has come out to say that Scotland is willing to play its fair part, but it cannot do so as a part of the Union. It can't act independently of what's going on at Downing Street. It has to be a part of a British signing up to ensure that more than 20,000 people are being taken over 5 years. That, according to some of the people I've spoken to today, Marzia, is simply not good enough. In a time of crisis, of history, global crisis, Britain really needs to step up to the table, Marzia.
Well, I mean, I think looking at the rally there today and what we've seen actually in many European countries, it seems to stress the schism that more and more we're seeing between a lot of government officials in various countries and actually the people on the ground, especially after those images have gone viral with the young migrant or immigrant actually drowning and showing those images. It seems that it was something that awakened the masses throughout Europe, and yet we see some of the European governments having still very reactionary type of action. Your take, do you see that there is a schism growing right there where you are in the UK?
Marzia, anybody who's out on the street in central London this afternoon would know that there is compassion here. There is support for people who, through no fault of their own, because of either financial, militaristic, or social conditions, have had to flee their country of origin. And anybody who's even tried to make the most basic of journey from one country to the other, and I'm talking here through scheduled flights, will know how difficult it can be. Now imagine, if you will, that you are doing this, walking with all your earthly possessions for miles, over weeks, over months, over countries, through borders where perhaps the reception has not been as positive as you might have hoped it could be, with nothing else to show for your efforts than perhaps a return journey to the country of origin. I think the British people are trying to show the Prime Minister today, in as emphatic a way as possible, that the British government's policy so far on the refugee crisis does not reflect that wider public opinion. And if I may quickly, Marzia, just mention, last week I did a package on this very issue where the Prime Minister on Tuesday was resolute in his stance. It's not Britain's job to take more refugees. Solving the problem at the origin was the way forward. Merely 36 hours later, because of the public reaction to some of those internet images, the Prime Minister had to do a complete U-turn. Now imagine what might happen here if some of these images and some of the messages coming out today go viral. We will be stopping by the Prime Minister's residence, and I hope the message is coming through to him loud and clear. Civil society does not support you, Mr. Cameron, and I think if I just pan back out here with my cameraman, you will get the opportunity to see that in as crystal clear a fashion as possible, Marzia.
And of course, also we know that Jeremy Corbyn has been elected Labour Party leader today, which is also a significant political message. And one of the things he said, Amita, he said that he would definitely be participating in that rally today. So perhaps we're seeing different political a change on the horizon in the UK.
We don't want to put too much a point and emphasis on what's happened today. It has been a day of action, but these rallies mean nothing if they're not backed up by firm government policy. And now, instead of merely an MP on the back benches who's often talked about the refugee crisis, his anti-war stance and so on, getting up as his first public appearance and saying, refugees welcome here, that Britain should be a place of sanctuary, not just political posturing. Well, I think the wind of change is blowing. I'm not quite sure what it will take in its wake, Marzia, but it means something, and we shouldn't forget that. Not everybody is represented by the government policy here, and we've seen that in as stark circumstances as possible today, both with the Labour Party elections and this on the ground.
All right, thank you so much, Amina Taylor, for that update on the ground in London at the rally. Press TV's correspondent.